People have been searching for the truth throughout the ages. Whatever record you look at from previous societies, previous civilizations, thousands of years ago, or just a few hundred years ago, there is always records left behind mentioning people praying to God, praying to something, looking up to something that is higher. Different civilizations may have concluded that something is higher than what another civilization would conclude. But in essence, there is this innate desire to find the truth. This explorative faculty that is so innate and embedded deeply in our being. If you observe, for an example, a baby, as soon as the baby comes out of the mother's womb, you'll notice that the eyes eventually open up as wide as it possibly can to look around, to observe the colors. This in itself is a form of observation, a form of exploration. Hearing all the different sounds, feeling, touching. The sense perceptions are exploring. The sense perceptions themselves are being explored first, and they are then used as a means to continue exploration. And once the baby grows up and it can start to crawl, eventually it starts to reach out to different things. The baby puts it in its mouth to see, is it edible? What is this? And so it's a process of exploration. And as we grow up, we continue to explore. But somewhere down the line, exploration kind of ends. And it ends because we have been occupied to what we have discovered during our exploration. We may have discovered certain pleasures. We may have discovered certain knowledge, certain types of conclusions, beliefs. And so as soon as we take these, wear these conclusions or these pleasures or these different modes and activities that we have discovered in our exploration, as soon as we take them on, we can lose this inner faculty to continue to explore because we have concluded to ourselves that this is it. And this conclusion can take place consciously or subconsciously. Consciously, perhaps because we have subscribed to a particular belief, a religion, or subconsciously, without knowing, we have fallen so deep into cycles of pleasure or chasing after a particular dream or a goal. Now, this is a guide on spirituality and how to reach enlightenment. Every religion has some form of a promise. Enlightenment, heaven, nirvana, liberation, freedom, immortality. There's all these different promises. And the whole purpose of this is not to identify different means or activities within the experience of life that is right or wrong. This isn't a discussion or an exploration into what is right or wrong. Because as soon as we fall into the dilemma of what is right and wrong, in any instance in life, eventually we become entangled, and that in itself is somewhat conclusive. That in itself can somehow be justified as to why we shouldn't continue to explore. And so you've clicked on this video because maybe you are one of these people who may have existed 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, who were also on a pursuit towards the truth. Or you may be an individual who's genuinely intrigued as to what I'll be speaking about here. But we'll be talking about what spirituality is. We'll speak about why spirituality. Why is this even worth a discussion? We'll talk about what, and then we'll talk about how. So, discussing the why of spirituality? Why is there a point? And really, it's futile to dwell too much on the why aspect. Why do you want freedom? Why do you want heaven? Why is that? And we'll notice that whoever you may be, whatever instance in life, it's really a question you've got to ask yourself. Why have I clicked on this video? What am I hoping to gain out of this? In life, wherever you are, whatever the case, whatever stage you are at, whether you are a devout spiritual practitioner, you are a devout religious person, or an atheist, whatever the case, there are two ways in which we can react and respond to life situations that take place. One way is by running away and avoiding. And the other way is embracing what life has offered. And so when you ask yourself why do you want liberation? Why do you want enlightenment? When you ask yourself this question with deep sincerity and honesty, what comes up? What is the reason behind why you even clicked on this video? And this is very fundamental to observe, because if we are hoping to try and get something out of this video, that in itself can actually stop us from getting what this video has to offer in a way. As soon as there is some form of expectation, we get in our own way. And as mentioned, it's either you are running away from something or you are embracing something. So why do you want liberation? Why do you want enlightenment? Why do you want to go to heaven? Why? Are you running away from something, or are you embracing something? And the truth is this: most likely, we want a better situation, not for the purpose of just improving life alone. We want a better situation because we want to abandon the previous or the current situation. And this is the only way it happens. You see it throughout life, you see it throughout existence, you see it throughout the animal kingdom. When a bird flies south in the northern hemisphere, birds will fly south during winter, closer towards the equator, as it's warmer. It's a better habitat for the birds to thrive. And the whole purpose for the birds to thrive and to improve your environment is to prolong life, so that life may continue. But we, as human beings, we find ourselves getting so occupied in trying to constantly improve life situations so that life can be prolonged and continued. But there's a line that can be drawn, beyond which, if you get any bigger of a house or any faster of a car, it's really futile and pointless. And so we do these things for the pleasure of it. We do these things for the fun of it. And so then very quickly, our life, our perspective is adapted to chasing after pleasures. Pleasures are short-lived. They feel as though they are fulfillment. They feel as though they are happiness, but pleasures are just pleasures. And so, really, chasing after enlightenment or heaven is yet again another chase after some form of pleasure. Every form of pleasure is an escape. Every time we are about to engage in some type of pleasure, we have to negotiate with ourselves and convince ourselves that this is the best thing to do. We may negotiate or we may not, but in essence, as we engage in some type of pleasure, this activity, whether it's overeating, some type of sexual activity, drugs, or chasing or improving materialistic aspects of life, whatever it may be. And once again, I reiterate, this isn't about whether it's right or wrong, but in essence, there is a justification as to why chasing after this pleasure is the best thing to do right now. And because there is a justification for it, it means that we are trying to leave behind and improve our current situation. But as soon as the pleasure is over, we find ourselves being and staying in the current situation. So really, there is no improvement after pleasure. And I'm speaking about this because it all goes back to realizing that chasing after heaven, chasing after something that is promised, enlightenment, freedom, liberation, a lot of us, we want these things because we are trying to end our current suffering, because we are trying to end our deep yearning and seeking, which somehow turns into suffering, perhaps. So, the chase after pleasure is no different to the chase after heaven and enlightenment or liberation. And that's something that I feel like it's extremely important to know. Because as mentioned earlier, it's either you are chasing or running away from something. Running away is synonymous to chasing after something. Because when you chase after something, you have to leave that thing behind. But in essence, you're either running away or disregarding something, or you are embracing. And so what does it mean to embrace? When you holistically embrace all aspects of life, and I emphasize the word holistic, you naturally find yourself in heaven. You naturally find yourself in a liberated state. And this is why. When we suffer in life, if we don't holistically accept and embrace the suffering that is taking place, we are only accepting one part of life. And what that means is that there is a separation that's created between what we like and dislike, what we want and what we don't want. And this very separation gives birth to a fragmented reality, a delusional reality where you cannot see yourself as a part of the whole. You cannot see yourself as complete. For as long as you like something over the other thing, there is no completion. There needs to be a reconciliation between the polarities in life. Heaven, enlightenment, freedom, liberation, these things do not mean that we are breaking the shackles of the body and the shackles of the mind, and we are not getting rid of suffering. What they mean is that there is a total embracement of the wholeness. Life in itself is already complete. And so in order for us to recognize our completeness, we've got to embrace the completeness of life. Life is one. And in order for us to recognize the oneness, we have to embrace its oneness. The moment we fragment reality and say that I am this category and I am this person and I think these people are better than these people, the moment we start to fragment our reality in this way, we will always feel like something's missing, because it's an incomplete artificial reality we have created in our paradigm, in our mind. And so in order to live holistically, we've got to embrace life holistically. When there are moments of joy and happiness, we embrace these, we accept these. But when there are moments of challenges, suffering and pain, we reject these. And we try to run away and convince ourselves that this isn't happening. And eventually we numb ourselves to the suffering and the challenges in life. But like I said, life is a holistic thing. Existence is holistic, it's complete. So if you are numbing one aspect of life, you are numbing every aspect of life. If you found yourself becoming numb to the suffering and the challenges in life, and they don't worry you anymore, well, you've also become numb to the happiness and the joy and the deep profoundness and the meanings in life. And so why live in such a polar way when we can reconcile the polarities, embrace it all? I'd like to also emphasize that embracing or accepting does not mean that this is preferential. If you are suffering for whatever reason, accepting the suffering does not mean that this is what needs to be happen. It does not mean that this is what you want to happen. It does not mean that the suffering is superior to anything else. Accepting the suffering is the best possible thing you can do. Embracing and accepting that there is suffering taking place gives you the platform and the space to understanding the suffering. And once it's understood, it's already alleviated. This is how it goes. Any problem, once the problem is understood, the solution is already there. And so if you ever try to run away from challenges and suffering in life, you are not willing to understand the situation. So you have two options. You either embrace or run away. Running away expends so much energy. You are creating so much resistance in the entirety of your being. You are creating psychological resistance. You are creating emotional resistance. You are creating physical resistance. And if any aspect of who you are, of what you are, if there is resistance in any of these aspects of life, you'll find them translating into all aspects of life. If there's psychological resistance, you may find physical resistance. You might start to feel some cramps later on, a heaviness on the shoulder, a tension in the muscles, inflammation in the body. But if there is a sense of acceptance and embracement to reality in its entirety, if there is a sense of embracement to the totality of what existence has to offer in front of us, and even aspects within ourselves, if there is a total embracement, there's no option but to find yourself as whole. There's no option but to find yourself as complete. So this is why humans throughout the ages are chasing after the truth, because the truth is the ultimate reconciliation of polarity. Why run away from suffering? How beautiful would it be if we were in a position where whatever comes our way in life, we fully and totally embrace it until it's reconciled. Now, I'd like to also mention that at some point in human existence, there was a deep emphasis on survival. So today we may only need to walk a couple of steps until we can open a tap and we have unlimited water. We can open a fridge and we have food. And we have a roof over our head that protects us. Really, homes and houses are small, little castles that protect you from the outside. And then you have a bed where you can sleep. In essence, we don't need to worry so much about survival as much as humans used to thousands of years ago. Or maybe even a few hundred years ago, to be honest. But because the survival aspect of life has been alleviated in a way, there is so much more time on our hands. And so what do we do with that time? What do we do? And so this is something, as we reflect on this, we start to realize that what we do with our time, as there will be an end at some point, what we do with our time, we will start to rearrange our life to go for meaningful and profound experiences in life. Everything comes to an end. Whether you are listening to a song, your favorite song, it comes to an end. Whether you are eating food, it comes to an end. When you wake up in the morning, the day comes to an end. The movie, it comes to an end. And thank God these things come to an end, because you wouldn't want to listen to a particular song for eternity. But life also comes to an end. And this is where it gets a bit controversial or sensitive for some people. But that's something we've got to really swallow. It's a truth we've got to swallow. That life comes to an end. And so if you imagine it and think about what you'd think about when you're on your deathbed, it's hard to predict at the moment. But in essence, what's more meaningful? How much you have accumulated and accrued, or really the profound, meaningful moments in life? And so then you might ask yourself, what is the most profound thing a human being can do? What is the most profound thing a piece of life can do? Is it not to reflect on its own life? Is it not to observe and understand this life? This is the most profound and meaningful thing a human being can engage in. As mentioned earlier, all life is striving for survival. But once that survival is covered, once it's almost guaranteed that there will be procreation and life will be prolonged and generations of life will continue. Now there is time. Why is there that time? Has life come about so that we can use that time to accumulate as much money as possible? Has life come about to accumulate as much wealth as possible? It's to understand life. It's to observe and recognize what this life really is. And so here's another why. Why spirituality? Why spirituality? I've had many conversations with different friends and people, even strangers. And one thing I've noticed is that most people, they have concluded that there is no interest, there's no deep interest as to why life needs to be understood. There is no deep interest as to why people engage in spirituality. And these people themselves are usually occupied with the life situations, with different experiences. They are busy chasing after the goals in life. They are busy chasing after the faster car, the bigger house, the more beautiful woman or man. And like I said, there's nothing right or wrong with that. It's just as it is. However, it doesn't take much reflection to realize that these things are not the most profound and the most meaningful things in life. And that's a given. Numbers don't end. So no matter how much money you have, it doesn't end. And so I hope that covers the why. And so let's really dive deeper and understand what spirituality really is. What is spirituality? I've kind of already answered some of this. But in essence, spirituality is about embracing life, accepting life, surrendering to life. By no means does it mean that these terms imply some form of preference. I have embraced and accepted the way the sun rises and the way the sun sets. I have accepted and embraced this. I have no preference in this case. I do not disregard it. I do not like it. I do not dislike it. I have accepted that this is how it is. Now, I have in no way given up as to why the sun sets or rises in this way. There hasn't really been a challenge for there to be me giving up. Giving up and surrendering are two different things. There was no loss. There was never a battle to begin with for there to be a loss. And so that's what true embracement is. That's what true surrender is. That's what true acceptance is. Another word for accepting is to allow. Accepting may be too heavy, and so we allow things to just be. But to what degree do we allow it to be? To what degree do we accept things? To what degree do we embrace things? Because we know that we can very easily accept, say, and try to convince ourselves that we accept situations, yet we don't. And please, let's together observe and see how subtle the situation is. When we see a tree or a human being who says something, let's say a tree. Are we really accepting this tree? If I ask you the question, do you accept this tree as it is? Most likely the answer will immediately be yes. But what part of recognizing what that even is in terms of the tree, what the tree really is, what part in recognizing the tree is your own projection as well? Because the moment you have imprinted your own projection on the object or the situation that you're trying to accept, you have not accepted it for what it really is. Do we see this? Now I want this part of the video to really be interactive. I want you to try and verify right now in real time. If you need to close your eyes, close your eyes. But in essence, let's try to verify this within our own existence. I don't want you to believe or disbelieve anything I'm saying. I want you to just verify it and see it for yourself. If I bring you any object, if I bring you this glass cup, this cup, or mug, when you observe it, are we seeing it for what it really is? Or are we imprinting our own projection? And that projection was conditioned within us maybe some years ago. Maybe when we were an infant and we were taught that this is a cup, now we see this object, this cup as a cup, or a mug as a mug, or a glass as a glass. These are all just different labels. But as we observe, are we able to observe this without claiming any sense of ownership to this? The moment we project anything about this upon itself, it ceases to be what it is. And if so, and for that reason, if something ceases to be what it is, no more are we embracing life in its totality. No more are we realizing and observing life in its wholeness and completeness. This is an extremely subtle thing that takes place on the psychological level at least, in our mind, throughout our life, we have created all these different thought patterns, all these different judgments and conclusions and belief systems. And they are all to project onto reality, onto existence. So spirituality is about recognizing these projections. It's about recognizing the pitfalls that we create for ourselves. It's about recognizing what is limiting our perception, our perspective. And so really spirituality is about enhancing your perspective. And you enhance it not by taking in. As mentioned, life is complete and whole as it is, regardless of your opinion, regardless of what you'd like to project on it. And so really spirituality is about enhancing your perception to such an extent where you have fully embraced everything that is perceived. The moment a small atom or a small fraction of what is perceived is not embraced, separation occurs. Reality becomes fragmented. Reality becomes illusory. Spirituality or seeking the truth, in essence, is about reconciling the polarity in life so that there is no more separation. It's just oneness. The reason why you see yourself as separate to the other person or the other object is because we have created distance and separation. If every thought is a brick, we have built fortresses of these to stop anything external to attack whatever sits within the fortress. But the funny thing is that whatever sits in the fortress can never be attacked. Because it's complete. Imagine you spend years and years building a fortress. What are you really protecting? Myself. I'm protecting myself. Can you really protect yourself? You only ever need to protect yourself if you are holding on to something. And I mean that in a psychological sense. If you are holding on to a particular belief system, if you are holding on to a particular thought pattern, an ideology, an opinion, if you hold on to these things, then they need to be protected. Because something might come along and convince you that you don't need to hold on to it. This is also why this type of reflection can be uncomfortable for some. And if it is uncomfortable, we are on the right tracks. This is the nature of psychological or the nature of the mind thoughts. I like to refer to whatever takes place psychologically as the movement of objects. Thoughts are no different to any other object. I showed you this beaker, this cup, mug, glass. This is an object. Now observe your most important thought, your most important belief, or whatever it may be. That too is an object no different to this. And whoever you may be, chances are it can sound or come across as extremely blasphemous having me make this claim. But really, all belief systems and opinions and thoughts, they are also just objects. However, these objects have been given a different value. We have attributed a different value to a particular thought or an opinion. We have attributed a different value. If I have spent 10 years studying at university, studying biology, my opinion about biology is valued internally, maybe externally by people as well, because they see my credentials. Internally, I value my opinion on biological aspects or knowledge higher than someone who hasn't studied these 10 years on biology. Can you see the mismatch here? Why am I justifying a higher value of opinion that I have created? Why am I concluding so much? We have literally limited so much of life in putting so much emphasis and giving so much weight to our opinions and our thoughts. This is exactly why I mentioned earlier, don't believe anything I'm saying. Verify this for yourself. Really observe your thoughts and see thoughts for what they really are. Another reason why we value thoughts is because thoughts are the objects that not everyone can access. What goes on in your mind, the people around you cannot access. And so they feel more intimate, they feel more familiar. And so we use the familiarity of the thoughts as justification as to why they are more important and different to different objects in life. And so you might ask the question, well, what's so bad about giving more value to thoughts or valuing other objects more than other objects? What's so bad about that? Like I said earlier, it's not about what's good or bad. It's not about what's right or wrong. It's about what is happening and what that which is happening is doing. Every cause has its effect. And so naturally, if I value this cup, and I keep bringing it up, if I value this so much, if it falls to the ground and breaks, what is the consequence of that? It's not wrong that I value this. It may have some sentimental meaning. It may be my great-great-granddad's mug or glass that he used to drink in. And so if it breaks, what is the consequence of it breaking? It's almost as though a part of me has broken. And so we have given value to this object, and we have identified with it so much to the extent where it became a part of us. But this identification comes at the sacrifice, at not being able to view yourself as the whole. It comes at the sacrifices at not being able to view yourself as complete. And like I said earlier, embracing all aspects of life, regardless of the different values we attribute to different fragments or aspects within life. If we embrace it all, we can then realize that we are the all. If we embrace absolutely the completeness and oneness in life, are we able to recognize the completeness and oneness of us, of ourselves. So I hope this covers what spirituality in essence is. It's the dissolution, it's dissolving that which creates separation somehow. Spirituality is almost like wiping the window, the muddy, the murky window, so that there is clarity. Through this clarity, there is no separation. That's what spirituality is. And so how do we do this? How do we go about trying to reach enlightenment? It's funny because I mentioned it earlier. If you try to reach enlightenment, or if you are trying to reach liberation, if you are trying to reach some form of completeness, some form of ultimate goal, the very seeking itself implies that you are lacking. But the very nature of who you are is that you do not lack anything. So seeking the truth is highly contradictory to what's going on. But in embracing all aspects of life, saying yes to what's happening right now, if we are able to do this, heaven, enlightenment, freedom, liberation, nirvana, all of these things, they become a natural result of embracement. I keep reiterating this. You embrace the whole of life, you embrace life in a holistic way, you will recognize yourself as holistic and not separate from the whole. And so really the how is something that is down to you. How you embrace life, how you go about embracing certain things that are extremely difficult to embrace and accept, that's down to you. You are the one who has created, or you are the first person perspective that has received all these different ideologies and conditioning and belief systems. And so you will know how to position yourself or position these aspects or view them differently so that you allow for the space to see yourself as the whole. One of the most common practices that we see in spirituality and religions is prayer. Prayer as well as meditation. Prayer and meditation are extremely similar. Meditation is not about sitting down with your back straight in a particular position, in a particular location. There is no requirement for a specific location in meditation. Meditation is also something that is impossible to do. You cannot meditate. There is no doing in meditation. Meditation is essentially being as existence is. Meditation is essentially the embracement, a practice to embrace. But in order to be as existence is, the moment there is someone doing something, immediately you are not being as the existence is. So in order to recognize yourself as existence is, recognizing itself, we have to embrace and allow whatever arises in the mind to arise. And it's funny because the moment you try to do this, the moment you sit down and close your eyes, when different thoughts come up and you embrace these thoughts and you accept them, what can eventually happen is that you'll be challenged and teased with a with a thought or an opinion of a higher value. Just so that a reaction can be taken from you. And please observe this. Whatever the thought arises, whatever the image that arises, embrace it. Allow it to be the same way you allow existence to be. And eventually, there is no option but to see yourself as existence is. This is the whole point of meditation. If we are able to embrace life and accept life and allow life to be truly and sincerely and honestly, if we are able to do this, you naturally have found yourself enlightened or in heaven or in nirvana, whatever is being promised to you, whatever it is. So this is the problem with a lot of people that suffer. When it comes to suffering, you either run away or embrace it. Feel the suffering, feel the pain, and observe the pain. As you observe, there might be a slight sprinkle of appreciation somehow. Appreciating that it's a lesson that it's teaching you. Appreciating that this suffering is something that happens to people. And once there is that sprinkle of appreciation, there may be a sprinkle of understanding. And as soon as there is understanding, there is no more suffering. The moment there is understanding, there is no more suffering. Your understanding can be challenged by another thought to retain you within suffering. That happens too. But the moment there is understanding and we allow life to be as it is, we become life as it is. Whatever you observe, you become. So if your perspective is warped in a particular way, you are warped in that way. So if we allow things to be as they are and observe the mental shackles, the psychological shackles we have placed, the small keyholes through which we see life, the lenses we have placed on ourselves, if we allow life to just be, it means dropping these lenses, opening the door so that we don't look through the keyhole. Once you ask yourself the question, is there anything that is missing in this moment? And the answer is no. And you have a smile on your face. What else is there? Now you can live. If there is fear or discomfort in this type of investigation, that too is suffering, coming from the projections of our deep inner conditioning. We don't want any of our conditioning to project anything onto life. If you are a devout believer in God, and you believe that God has created existence, why would you ever project anything onto God's creations? Why? Surely, for you to understand God and to be closer to God, you are to accept God's creation. No matter how much you observe this, you will realize that true profoundness and true meaning in life is experienced. Even fragmented moments of profoundness and meaning. These are experienced in moments where we are here, right now, embracing life and accepting it as it is. Don't be afraid of the silence. Also allow that to be. All movement, everything that takes place, sits within silence. So also allow that to just be. This video is titled A Full Guide on Spirituality, How to Achieve Enlightenment. Let's go back to really asking the question of why did you really click this video and watch it up to this? Why? Is it because you have embraced life in its totality? Or is it because you are running away from something else? Thank you so much for watching. This is Hassan from The Spiritual Walks. I speak about spirituality, self-development, as we are all on a journey towards the truth. If you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy this one here, which I will link to you. And I really hope to see you on the next one.